everyone, and welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, with episode 25 of our show, and we've got only one fabulous co-host sitting next to me.
It's me, Diana.
And live via Snow Bunker.
It's me, Jackie.
Hi, Jackie.
Hi, guys. I'm at home.
It is snowing. If you don't live near us, it is super duper snowy. They've already canceled all the schools, so we figured, hey, let's Skype Jackie in rather than make her come over. I wanted to make her come over,
I did not.
Skidding around, but that's
I
me.
kind of wanted to come over too, to be honest.
It's really snowy.
So live via the magic of Skype, we have Jackie. So we will hopefully not totally lose her. So let's get into it. I guess
you say Jackie's part of our virtual reality right now?
That was my segue. I was going to segue that. You preemptively segged me.
Oh, no.
It's not nice.
I foiled your segue.
It's not nice. So I'll let the audience decide. My segue was, I guess it's apropos that Jackie is virtually appearing here because today's subject is virtual reality. How's that?
I like it. Fine.
Is that good? Does that work?
Just scrap everything I did.
Okay. I'm going to edit that out. Cut that. Cut it.
Why are you cutting it?
I'm not really. No.
Oh.
we can't get video and audio to work, so poor Jackie is just forced to use audio cues. She cannot see my hand movements.
Remember that.
I'll try.
I'm just alone in a room. In the
The
dark.
black box.
I'm going to pantomime this next article. All right. So we have two articles plus, what do you call it then? The gravy article? The gravy article that we're going to be talking about in our discussion of virtual reality. Now, if you listen to our preview episode, we talked a lot about various virtual reality platforms. Virtual reality is kind of a service in the modern age because one of the things we noted while reading all these articles was they were written before virtual reality was something that you could go and try out at Best Buy or just buy for your house and have it be really good. You should listen to the preview episode. We go into a little bit more depth than that. We'll probably bring up some of those points again, but we don't really want to spend too much time on virtual reality discussion itself so much as get into the articles of how virtual, I'm going to have trouble with that one.
We'll just call it VR.
VR can be used in treatment for a variety of needs. So the articles we're going to be reviewing today are Effectiveness of Virtual Reality Exposure in the Treatment of Arachnophobia Using 3D Games by Bouchard, Cote, St-Jacques, Robillard, and Renaud from Technology and Healthcare, 2006. Mm-hmm. Not a journal we usually read.
Mm-mm.
Case study using a virtual reality computer game to teach fire safety skills to children diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome by Padgett, Strickland, and Coles from Journal of Pediatric Psychology.
Fun.
2006 also. And then our gravy article that we'll sort of start by talking a little bit about, can virtual reality exposure therapy gains be generalized to real life? A meta-analysis of studies applying behavioral assessments by Morina, Ijntema, Meyerbroker, Emmelkamp from Behaviour Research and Therapy, 2015.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. So Dinah, you picked this topic as something you really wanted to talk about. Why was that? Because I never asked, actually, till just right now.
Well, I actually picked it because I thought that it would be something that you would want to talk about.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank
I
you.
did.
Wow, you guys.
That's right. Because we successfully avoided getting a 3D TV.
I never wanted.
We never
a 3D
had to jump
TV.
on that train.
No.
So that was good. And I don't know. I don't want to buy an expensive virtual reality room for our house or whatever you have to do.
Get our own holodeck like Star Trek.
Yeah. So I was like, well, maybe if we just do a little virtual reality episode, then that will wet your whistle and we won't need to delve any further.
Talking about virtual reality related research is almost the same thing as playing virtual reality video games, I found. No, it's not.
Well, now that you talk about the holodeck, now I'm actually kind of interested.
Oh, now you want to do it.
Yeah.
Too late. We blew all our money on that Google Cardboard.
I know.
But I already have my Sir Arthur Conan Doyle hat, my Sherlock Holmes hat.
It's a deep cut.
That's right.
It's
You know it.
TNG.
I don't want to do anything virtual reality
Why
All right.
not?
Except be here virtually through Skype.
because I like the real world.
When I chose this topic, I did a quick Google Scholar search around, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's like so much literature on virtual reality. This will be easy. And then when we slated it in as an upcoming topic, and then when I went back to do more research, what I actually discovered is that there is research out there related to virtual reality, but very little of it is behavior analytic in any way, which was surprising to me because I feel like this should be right up our alley. But the research that's out there deviates quite a bit from what you would typically find in behavior analytic research. So we picked a couple articles here. You guys can tell that they're not from journals that we typically work in, right? But the articles that we chose, I think, are interesting, have something that can at the very least relate over to behavior analysis. And this is an area where I think could do a lot of interesting work incorporating virtual reality in the future, which I'm sure we'll talk about when we pull into a certain station. Mm-hmm. But that's how I chose the topic, and then it was really interesting to research. Yeah. But I didn't find what I was expecting to find at all.
Very briefly, let's talk about that meta-analysis article. So basically, that was where we all started. We kind of took a look at that and used that sort of branch back and find some actual research. Because again, a meta-analysis isn't really a very super-controlled study. But what that really just generally looked at was the idea of, is virtual reality as good as the real thing? So they looked at a number of anxiety disorders. I think they looked at some phobias, some specific phobias, agoraphobia. They looked at a number of different phobias, different studies that used treatment for these phobias. And again, if you've ever read, there's not a lot of work on anxiety so much in behavior analytic journals. There's some. I know Pat Fryman had an article in, 2008, a couple years back, about why we should be studying anxiety.
Yeah, and some doctoral students have been working on anxiety as well at Western New England University.
It's a great topic. Mm-hmm. And I think one that behavior analysts have only recently started to work in or started to feel comfortable working in, but it's completely an area that we can work in. Mm-hmm. And I look forward to seeing more research in that area. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the meta-analysis here looked at all the research that had been done using virtual reality in the past. And by and large, 99% of this research is related to working on desensitization to particular phobias. So arachnophobia, fear of spiders, flyophobia, fear of airplanes.
Don't think that's the term.
I'm pretty sure I'm close.
Okay.
Acrophobia.
Acrophobia.
That's it. Flyophobia.
Is that flyophobia?
Yeah.
Really?
Acrophobia sounds like someone that's scared of like acrobats.
But acrobats fly.
I know, but it just sounds funny.
That's right up there next to fear of clowns. There's no clownophobia, which
they
could have also done, except everyone was too terrified. Is there agoraphobia or just
no?
It's okay. So the majority of these studies that they have summarized here are just fear of spiders and fear of flying. That's pretty much
I could use that second study myself.
I know. Rob has a little bit of flyophobia. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And arachnophobia.
I'm not that scared of spiders. If they like fall on me,
yeah,
I go,
you don't like things falling on you.
No,
or you falling.
No, I don't like when things fall on me. I don't think that's not a specific phobia. Nobody likes that.
When your
crap fell on
airplane
me.
falls out of the sky, you don't like that.
Yeah.
When spiders fall into your hair, you don't like that either.
I'm lonely. I think that I like it when things fall on me.
Really?
Yeah.
Like a cat? That would be fine, I guess.
Or a black scorpion.
There is no black scorpion falling upon this table, Jackie. You must know that by now.
Do you know someone gave me a picture of the club where Skinner first made that statement?
That is also a pretty deep cut there.
In honor of the fact that I made them read verbal behavior for one of our old journal clubs. I thought it was sweet.
That's sweet.
I'm no doctor like you guys. I'm no student's gonna give me nothing nice.
That's pretty nice. I never got anything like that. You should feel honored.
I do feel honored. That's why I brought it up.
Oh, good. So in this, they summarized these articles by looking at effect size, right? So that is a nice way to cut across many different forms of measurement across different studies and do some fancy statistical work on those, and then take a look at overall what was the magnitude of effect that they saw pre-post for these different studies. Sort of their take-home point was that these virtual reality treatments seem to work about as well as other types of cognitive behavioral therapies that they also were using to treat the same types of phobias.
Yes. And they themselves were effective in terms of the measures they were looking at for successful treatment in virtuo.
Yes, in virtuo is what they call it. Yeah.
It's kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It is. It's nice to know, because otherwise this would be a stupid topic. And it wasn't as good as real life, so shrug.
Right, but there are many times when you can't do something in real life.
So it's a good thing that it was almost as good as real life.
Exactly, which is what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Moving on. So anyway, if anyone wants to read more about virtual reality as a whole, Morina et al. Is a good summary article.
Yep.
A good gravy article.
And that'll be on the site.
Okay.
So let's get into the real articles themselves, which we'll discuss.
No more fake articles.
Well, that's not. We'll get into a little more depth, as we're known for in the community. Let's look at your article first, Diana, on arachnophobia.
Okie dokie.
On DVD. Starring John Goodman.
Is that a movie?
You didn't see Arachnophobia?
No.
Oh, that's a scary movie about poison spiders.
No, I don't want to see that.
Did you see that movie, Jackie?
I did see it. I loved it.
It's
I
scary.
always think of John Goodman as a comedic actor.
It's a comedic movie. It's like supposed to be scary but funny. I just was scared.
I was just scared too, to be honest.
It's freaky.
Well, I didn't see it.
Well, it's too scary.
Thereby, it does not exist.
I need virtual reality treatment to help me watch the movie Arachnophobia.
That's just called watching TV. That's not virtual reality. So this article was written by a group of Canadians, Quebecois, to be specific. And I think it's nice to give them a shout out. And I'm glad that Rob pronounced their names because I think you did a good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, better than me. So this article was in the Journal of Technology and Healthcare, which I have not read any other articles from that journal, to be quite honest with you. So I'm not sure what else they talk about, but I bet that there's some interesting things in there that are completely unrelated to behavior analysis. And this article was relatively unrelated to behavior analysis as well.
It's fun. It's fun, though.
But I thought it was a good representation of the types of articles that I was finding as I was looking through the Morina et al. Meta-analysis. Half of them, like I said, were about spiders, and half of them were about flying, so I chose one that was about spiders because I didn't want to talk about flying as much. Another thing that's interesting that we should mention, too, is that all of these articles are relatively old.
Yep.
Right? Like, both of these are from 2006, and most of the research in this area is from kind of that time period. And virtual reality right now is a lot more popular than it was back then. And they even mentioned how expensive it was.
$10,000.
$10,000.
You want to buy a good virtuality setup right now, Jackie? How much would you pay for an awesome virtual reality setup in your home?
$0, but
Price is Right rules. You have to go over $1.
probably like $5,000.
$5,000. Diana, how much would you pay?
I'll pay $1, Bob.
So I guess technically you win because
Ding, 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 ding.
It's to get a good computer that'll run, the virtual reality, the headsets. There's like 2 big ones out right now. Is about $1,000, maybe a little less, and then the headsets themselves with like the really cool controllers you can use, where it's like virtual reality touch controllers, is about $700-800, and one of them even has like you can put little sensors and it knows where you are as you walk around your room. So not
This
even
all seems super lame.
$2,000. It's awesome. Is what you meant to say. Sorry.
You're right. I used the wrong word.
Sorry about that. Oh, there's some static on the phrasing of awesome right there. But yeah, so less than $2,000, you can get a setup. I am guessing that is 100 times better than the ones used in these studies.
Yeah.
Where they used a Pentium 3 processor.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I don't know why anyone would want that.
Oh, if you do the really good ones, it is very cool. It is very cool to do. We demoed one of them.
When?
I demoed one at a store once. That was way fun. And then we got our own little Google Cardboard, which is like the super cheap version, and we demoed that.
It is cool. It doesn't make me want to go live in a virtual world.
No, but these studies are not about virtual worlds. They're about specifically treating anxiety disorders.
Way to bring it back down.
Sorry. You want to talk about virtual reality video games? I can do that,
No.
but it's the wrong podcast.
It's okay. So it was interesting, I thought, that the research had been done so long ago before virtual reality was really available.
I mean, I'm guessing you could go do a virtual reality study right now in your own home, I suppose, for so much cheaper. So I bet we'll see a lot more of these studies.
Maybe we're the catalyst to start a whole new wave of
We did it,
virtual
everybody.
reality research. where they're actually going to use behavioral measures too.
Yeah.
That would be
that'd be nice.
Super great. So this study, they wanted to look at decreasing an overall phobia or phobic reaction to spiders for 11 people who were self-reportedly phobic of spiders. And they wanted to add to the research of using virtual reality by doing what they called, as we said, an in virtuo experience, which is different from an in vivo experience. An in vivo experience would be, I guess, how you'd always would have treated a phobia, right? Have the item there and work on systematically systematically decreasing your distance.
You're a bad therapist.
Keep backing it up.
Keep feeling more scared.
Decreasing your distance to the item until you're actually standing next to it and then touching it, all the while maintaining a somewhat level of calm and knowing when you're too anxious and backing away and saving that for the next day, right? So that would be your traditional series of phobia for snake or spider or cleaning products or whatever.
And you usually, I don't remember from this study, but usually you'd probably want to do some sort of like systematic desensitization or breathing exercises to sort of bring down the level of anxiety or any of those kind of autonomic
they did some
responses.
like pre and post work with everyone too. For a spider, you could actually do an in vivo experiment or desensitization, right? But there are many other types of phobias where you don't have that luxury. And I would think flying would be one of them. Mm-hmm. Maybe snakes. You don't always have a snake available to you.
No.
And a host of other things.
I think anything with animals, you sort of, do you really want to have an animal? Spider, I guess we'd care less. But let's say someone had a fear of dogs.
Tiger.
Would you want to just have a dog that, hold on, this is my scary dog. I got to drag him around to people's houses and take care of this dog?
Awful.
I wouldn't.
Oh, yeah, if you're scared of like really like aggressive dogs.
Yeah.
That would be no good. Or like I said before, agoraphobia. So if someone is scared to leave their house, then that might be really difficult to get them to like a crowded mall or something like that if you're trying to take those systematic steps. So I could see virtual reality be really useful in that type of scenario. But what we were working with here was spiders. So what they wanted to do was see if they could substitute instead of those in vivo experiences, do an in virtuo experience with the virtual reality headset, and if they would get similar to results as to what had been seen in the past. So they recruited 11 participants, 10 women and 1 man, who wanted to work on their phobia of spiders. And there were 5 overall sessions. The first one was just an introductory session in which they did a host of different questionnaires. Sessions 2 through 4 were the actual VR sessions where they worked on systematically increasing their contact towards the spider. And then the 5th session was the wrap-up session in which they actually had a spider present and they checked to see how close did they get to the spider. Each session was 90 minutes long. In addition to doing the virtual reality and doing the pre-post test for what was called the BAT, which was the behavior avoidance test, the behavior avoidance test was the only actual behavioral measure that they used in this study, okay? There was a lot of other question-answering behavior that occurred, and there was a lot of testing to see whether that question-answering behavior changed over time. It did, but I'm less interested in those questions than I am the actual behavioral avoidance test.
They had a lot of statistics. They were so proud of their statistics in this study.
Right?
Yeah, there's a lot of statistics.
Did you guys understand those statistics, by the way? Because I sort of I glossed over them a little bit.
I didn't pay a lot of attention to them. I looked at the ones I thought were relevant, but I didn't worry about them too much.
So some of the P's are, less significant than other P's if you look at them really. Like they have different measures. One is like a percentile of 0.05, one's 0.001. So they weren't consistent on what was significant versus what wouldn't be significant.
Yeah. So I want to tell you guys some of the different things that they did rate them on. So when they were using the virtual reality, they rated themselves every 5 minutes on their subjective level of discomfort, which was called the SUDS. They also rated themselves, this is a 0 to 100 scale, on their perceived level of presence. I'm not even sure what that means.
Like a gift you give to somebody.
No, the other type of presence.
Oh.
I think like how
that's awesome.
much you felt like you were like immersed in the situation, I think. their level of cyber sickness. Because remember, this was 10 years ago, right? So the virtual reality made you feel more, right? Like old virtual reality.
I'm kind of imagining that this looked a lot like that movie, The Lawnmower Man, where it was like, wow, we're in cyberspace.
I don't know what that is.
I imagine it as when you would go to the mall and you would get in one of those, like, those big, huge machines that you would pretend to run a roller coaster.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember those?
Kind of.
You would sit in a coaster chair, and then in front of you, they would show a video of a roller coaster, but then that big machine in the mall would move like you were on a roller coaster.
Yeah. Well, like the beginning of the movies at Regal was like that for a long time.
Oh.
Remember the roller coaster at the beginning?
Get raisinets and a soda. Yeah.
It felt so real.
Except that then you couldn't your chair didn't move.
That's true.
I know. It would be even better if I really like that roller coaster.
This is good. This is fun. A lot of fun.
All right. So they rated them on cyber sickness and also their difficulty in confronting their fear. So those were happening every 5 minutes. Additionally, there were pre-post questionnaires on the treatment credibility questionnaire, the spider beliefs questionnaire, the fear of spiders questionnaire, the fear survey schedule.
Spiders are your friends. True or false? That's false.
The perceived self-efficacy questionnaire, the state trait inventory, the Beck depression inventory, the immersion tendencies questionnaire, the presence questionnaire, the simulator sickness questionnaire. Yep, those.
A lot of questionnaires.
A lot of questionnaires.
But no direct observation.
There was one direct observation measure, which, like I said, was called the Behavioral Avoidance Test, or the BAT. And there were 10 steps of the BAT. And again, this was actually conducted in the office. They placed a spider in an opaque container 10 feet away from the individual. And the individual was seated in a chair. So step 0 was the individual standing up. And step 10 was actually holding the spider in your hand. Right. So, and then all
At one
the
point
steps...
you poked it with a pencil, too. I believe that was...
exactly. Let me see. So steps 1 through 6 were just walking over to the bowl. Step 7 was looking in the bowl. Step 8 was taking a pencil and touching the spider with the pencil. Step 9 was putting the spider on the tip of the pencil and taking it out of the bowl. And then step 10 was actually holding the spider in your hand.
11, put it down your shirt.
No, you didn't get to.
You're cured.
You're cured at the end. You get to take it home as a pet now. It was a daddy long leg spider. You guys know what kind that is?
Yeah.
It's no, it's not even a scary kind.
One time I went to a bathroom at an Audubon Society and I saw a daddy long leg. I said, "Oh, that's creepy." And then I looked up and there were like hundreds of them above my head.
Oh, that is creepy.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So it's daddy long legs has just a little body and
That's
it has
step 12.
really long legs. Hence the name daddy long legs. But they're completely harmless. So this wasn't like a giant fuzzy tarantula spider with fangs.
Right.
It was just a daddy long leg, so it wasn't going to hurt you. So they did that test pre-VR and post-VR. Now, what we don't have are the individual data for everyone because, again, it's not a single subject designed study. But I will do my best to kind of surmise what I think happened here. And what I haven't talked about at all is the independent variable, right? So what did the virtual reality look like? Now, keep in mind, this was 10 years ago, so I don't think it would look maybe as realistic as we're thinking. It was interesting. So they made this thing themselves. They took an old video game, Half-Life.
Yeah, they used Half-Life. So they used there was an engine. There was a way you could modify games. Like, you've been able to do that for a long, long time. But they took the Half-Life game, which came out in 1998. And it was looking old.
Is it like a first-person shooter? I don't know.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, do you guys really want me? I could go into the detail of Half-Life. But it pretty much was one of those games where it brought the idea of, oh, wow, when you shoot things, it's not just run and kill things. You can have a story in the game. And there are actually little spider monsters that will jump at your face.
That's what I was wondering. Did it already have spiders in it?
Well, they're like little fleshy looking. They're not quite spiders. But yeah, they had little creepy monsters that would jump on your head and turn you into a zombie. So I hope they didn't use those things, because I legitimately, there was a level where you're crawling in pipes and those things would jump at you, and I remember just screaming a lot and not being able to aim my gun.
Wow.
I played that game back in college. This is old. It's an old game.
Yeah, well, it's from '98. So. Okay, so they modified Half-Life to serve their purpose. So it says it's virtual reality, but it was kind of like they created it to be virtual reality, and that it was played on a computer screen, but they put a black
you had a headset
cloth
with a cloth over it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Because the issue with virtual reality is a lot of the goggles, they don't cover enough of your light so you can see outside of them.
Yeah.
And one of the big issues was that latency. So if you're playing with a headset that doesn't refresh itself fast enough, when you move your head, it's like a split second behind, and that makes you want to throw up. So that's why they had the cyber sickness in there, because I'm guessing this thing wasn't good enough to keep you from wanting to throw up if you used it.
It makes me want to throw up just to hear you say that. Yeah. Okay, so the game was controlled by a joystick. You started out in it's a basement. The whole thing is set in like a bunker.
If you're playing Half-Life, your choices are basement, bunker, or space planet. So
they did away with, there's no spiders in space.
Spider, step 13.
Yeah, seriously. They thought that would be too unrealistic to have spiders in space. So they went with basement, which of course, that makes perfect sense. That's where you would find spiders. So you started out there, and you could pick 5 different rooms to go into during the game. I put in quotation marks. This doesn't sound that fun. But room 1 had a table, a chair, and a small black spider. Just one, but he moved around quickly.
Good.
And the idea was really that you just explored these environments and kind of saw how much could you tolerate of it. They would keep you in the game for up to 20 to 30 minutes at a time unless you needed a break. And
you can just cyber puke.
Yeah, and then you could take a 5-minute break. So in the 90-minute session, you were in there for 75 minutes of the time, basically. Room 2 just had a table. There were 2 gray spiders with yellow stripes on them. They were medium-sized. One just sat there, but the other one, when you moved, he moved.
Ugh.
Yeah. Is that what they look like in the game? Do they have yellow stripes?
No, they have red forearms. They only have 4 legs. They have like 4 claws and rear claws, and they look just like a flesh bag.
Gross.
And they chitter around.
That's enough. Okay. Never mind.
They're super scary.
That sounds nasty. Okay. Number 3 room was a living room. And many spiders all around. And they would also follow you when you moved around the room. So
you step on them, though.
That's room 4.
Oh, that's the next room? Sorry.
Yeah, that's room 4. So in room 4, it was a lunchroom. And the spiders here were all on the floor. And you could walk in and step on them and kill them. And then room number 5 was the one that was really concerning to me, which was a small room with a giant tarantula. I'm reading right from the text. And then in parentheses it says, the size of a dog.
Like, what? When are you going to see that spider?
In your
nightmares.
Yeah, when you watch Stephen King's It.
Oh, yeah. Spoilers for It, everybody.
I never made it past the first 3 minutes
It's
of
a spider.
Once the clown was in the gutter, I was out. I screamed my head off, turned the thing off, and I really haven't looked back since then.
Everyone floats down there, Diana.
Other than developing this clownophobia that I apparently have. It's really just coming out now. This shows a lot of therapy for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So step 15, you fight the spider from It.
Okay, so that was the idea of the game, is just that you go around these virtual rooms and get as close to the giant dog-sized tarantula as you possibly can. That's your therapy.
Just breathe deep. It's okay. Dog-sized tarantula will not bite your face off.
Right. And then after that, they would do some sort of calming exercises, I believe. Mm-hmm. Virtual reality was presented in those 3 sessions, and then in the final session, they redid the behavior avoidance test again. So like I said, I don't have individual data, but I do have some evidence of behavioral measurement, so that's what I was going to report on. So I have the mean scores for the BAT, pre and post virtual reality treatment. So the mean score pre-virtual reality treatment was a 2. And if 0 was standing up and 6 was getting to the bowl, then 2 would be remaining about 6 feet away from the bowl with the spider in it. And that was as far as the mean distance people were comfortable going. Following virtual reality treatment, the post-BAT score mean score for the group was 5.73. So we're getting there. We're getting pretty close. That means that the mean was about 6, and 6 was standing next to the bowl, but not looking in the bowl, and definitely not picking up no spider.
What I think they should have done is just had a tiny room and just released a lot of spiders and shut the door for like 15 minutes and then open the door later, and I bet it would work.
Well, yeah, but that would be the treatment itself, because you'd just be flooding the hell out of that person.
That'd be flooding.
Right?
Save your virtual $10,000 virtual reality headset. Spend $15 on a box of spiders to throw at your patient.
Remind me not to go to you, Jackie, for my phobias.
The social validity scores were not as high as we'd hoped with our spider throwing.
Spider throw.
I know, I'm kind of horrible in that sense, I think. I'm like, let's just get it over with.
And we threw you in the deep end of the pool as well.
That's what happened. That's how I learned how to swim. My dad threw me off a dock.
But you like to swim.
Now I love to swim. Yeah. See?
After your virtual reality exposure therapy, now you enjoy swimming.
Yeah.
Oh, man, oh, man, oh, man. So they said, additionally, we got the information that a majority of the participants reached step 6.
That's
so
good.
At least 6 of them stood next to the bowl.
All right.
And 4 of them touched the spider with the pencil.
That's great.
So that was step 8.
I just want to say I feel like I'm being especially flip about silly research and whatnot tonight, so apologies. But I do not take people's phobias as like, get over your spider fear. I'm going to joke about it. More just, I understand. Because when we're talking about fear of flying, I am legitimately terrified to fly. So
wow.
I understand.
But you do
I did not know this about you.
I say that, but I hate flying. I can't sleep. I can't do anything. Like the second I fall asleep, I dream I'm falling and I wake up. I'm just constantly grabbing,
it's very
the
unpleasant.
armrest. The only thing I can do to pass the time is read old Marvel comic books in like these big reprint bind. Like that is literally my only way to stay sane. I can't play video games. I can't look at a laptop. I can't watch the movie. Nothing. It's just it's like a weird ritual because I hate it so much and it's so scary for me. So I'm not joking around because I think this is stupid. I just that's just me. But I feel for anyone who has a phobia.
Oh yeah, definitely. This isn't my particular phobia, but
no, I just don't like spiders. I'm not phobic of them.
Yeah. I think it's a combination of this being a little bit of older virtual reality that it
that's more the funny part.
Adds a level of comedy to it, but just think now how realistic you could make something like this. Like that is actually kind of terrifying to think of just in and of itself, that you could probably make something that felt incredibly real. Like I can only imagine when these people were doing this 10 years ago that they were like, oh, ha, 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 like this isn't a real environment that I'm in right now.
I mean, we could put a link up to what Half-Life looks like if people actually want to see what that game looks like. I mean, you go to YouTube. There's,
we can link to this. They give us the
they
link.
have the link.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, so we could have the link to this, but it's going to be chunky. It's not going to look realistic.
Chunky style.
Yeah.
I think they recognize some of that in their own research. So they talked about some other research that some of the other folks in this field had done, and they mentioned one study specifically that's by Hoffman and colleagues in 2003. And in their study, they used some type of system called Spider World. And in that virtual reality program, one of the steps was actually touching the spider. So when the individual got to that level, they had a fuzzy spider replica that they would put out for the individual to actually touch as they were touching it virtually as well. So they got the additional tactile sensation, which would freak me out. If you can only imagine, like you think that you're touching it like virtually and then you can actually feel it there. Like that seems shocking. I don't know if they prepped them for that ahead of time or not, but in that study, they reported that the studies that included the tactile piece into the virtual reality, those individuals had better success actually touching the live spider in the BAT.
Well, nowadays with the virtual reality controllers, whichever one you're buying, they actually have these hand controllers that when you look at your hands in virtual reality, there's something, so if you're playing a shooting game, you look down at your hands, and instead of the 2 controllers, you've got 2 guns. It's like, whoa, I got guns in my hands. So I imagine you could very easily say, hey, look down at your hands. There's a spider in your hands right now. It wouldn't be tactile.
That sounds terrifying.
It wouldn't be tactile, but you could actually now simulate you're picking up a spider.
Oh, you're petting your dog-sized spider. Oh, you put a collar on him. You're going to take him for a walk.
He's biting you.
No, he loves you. He's licking you.
He's your friend.
He's eating a bone.
He's got a hat on.
Your leg.
So you could do so much more. They do a lot with like rooms and trying to track where things are. So you could technically even have the physical spider toy and have that be part of the whole experience without, I guess, the scientist sneaking up on you and sticking it in your hands.
Yeah. The other limitation here is there was no control group, so they only had pre-post measures.
Oh.
Yeah. But, there's a lot more that I think that we could do in this area. Yeah. I guess we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about
5 seconds, Diana. How would you make this article real as far as we are concerned in terms of having actual
I have no problem with the BAT, right? That's a very real measure. They did it pre and post, so that was good. I would have loved to see all 11 participants' individual data. So I didn't have to make a guess when they said the majority of them reached step 6, what that exactly meant. I don't need so many questionnaires, although certainly these participants were experiencing anxiety, and we could look at other ways to measure anxiety, but self-report is completely valid.
Yeah.
We need to know about self-report for anxiety, so I'm not trying to knock that entirely. I would want additional concrete measures, and certainly I would obviously prefer single-subject design so that we could really see all the individual changes that occurred for these participants here.
Okay.
I would like to see a generalization component. Like, if you were sitting in your house and the experimenter came and snuck a spider in and you saw it, what would happen?
Okay, so outside of the therapeutic environment.
Yeah.
They included in here that they asked them to try to avoid seeing spiders at home during the course of the therapy. Like you're really seeking out a spider if you're phobic of spiders.
Yeah.
I'm like, let me see if it's working.
Unless you woke up and it was step 16, the spider is laying eggs in your ear.
No, stop it, Rob. You're freaking me out. Okay. So that's what I learned about treating spider phobia, arachnophobia, with virtual reality.
Beautiful.
Pretty fun.
Yeah. Interesting article, interesting place to continue, I think, with research on the subject.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about more of that in just a second. But before we do, for those of you who are new to the show, ABA Inside Track can be used for continuing education credits for BCBAs and BCABAs. So if you are interested in doing so, we always have a button you can click on to apply for CEs. We need to know your email, BCBA number. We need to know what episode it is. This is 25. And we have 2 secret code words we intersperse throughout the episode. And the first one is lucky, L-U-C-K-Y, lucky. And we'll have one more later on in the show. With our code word out of the way, let's continue on with the show. Jackie, you are going to talk about our next article using virtual reality to teach fire safety skills to children diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome. But since you're sort of in the virtual studio, I have been tasked to help you with discussion just because it's hard to share a lot of information over a phone where you can't see anybody and you're just talking to yourself.
True. So you start and I will jump in.
Okay. I'll start by discussing children with fetal alcohol syndrome. There's a lot of downside to drinking while you are pregnant. And if you have a lot of prenatal exposure to alcohol, which I think the statistics were 1 in 30 women are drinking at levels that can place their offspring at risk for the consequences of fetal alcohol syndrome.
7 or more drinks per week, Rob.
Ugh. That's a lot of I don't have 7 or more drinks per week, and I'm not pregnant, so that's sad.
That was a surprising statistic.
Well,
up your game.
That's right. You can either have partial fetal alcohol syndrome or fetal alcohol syndrome. This is sort of what I remembered it for, was cognitive deficits and the craniofacial abnormalities, so kind of a deformation of the head. Other than the craniofacial abnormalities, there can be growth deficiencies. There's often cognitive disabilities, a lot of times behavioral problems. they're quote unquote known, and they did mention this as sort of reports from teachers for being hyperactive, impulsive. They're unresponsive to verbal danger cautions. They have a hard time generalizing. They can have motor and visual spatial developmental issues. And as one teacher put it, quote unquote, are unteachable.
Yeah, I wrote gross next to that.
That's not nice. You don't want your rude phrasing coming up in research articles.
I actually crossed it out.
Yeah, like who's unteachable? That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well,
as demonstrated by this article. I
think they put it in there just to point out the difficulties that these children are faced with, because a lot of teachers will see them as quote unquote unteachable. So I think they wanted to drive home the point that fetal alcohol syndrome is a serious problem and it is a huge impact to learning.
And the kids are so young.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
they're so
only
young.
Like 5 years old in this study.
Yeah,
like,
they're scoring. They were able to be tested for IQ.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. They're not unteachable.
Yeah, no, I think your statement gross really sums it up.
Okay,
but in any case, they can be very difficult to teach, and even children with fetal alcohol syndrome who have average intelligence, a lot of the same issues with generalization and difficulty learning safety skills is still apparent, even though you would think, well, you have average intelligence. Can't you learn these skills just like your neurotypical peers? Mm-hmm. So safety skills is really an area where a lot of students with disabilities have a hard time, but they specifically make the case that children with fetal alcohol syndrome or partial fetal alcohol syndrome are really at risk. And you know, they talk about safety, fire safety being kind of the number 3 threat to young children, traffic accidents and drowning being 1 and 2. And if you have some sort of a limitation, their limitations in cognitive, social, or emotional function, you are twice as likely to die in a fire or to, die in any sort of safety-related skill, I believe.
All right. Mm-hmm. So you've set the stage.
I've set the stage.
I could imagine that would be the case. I mean, I think that it's really difficult to teach kids what to do when there's a fire, right? Because most of the time they're probably just going to freak out.
Like in Kindergarten Cop.
Yeah.
For at least the students with fetal alcohol syndrome, the goal here was to find a way to teach the students using multiple modalities. And they looked at virtual reality as a way to provide that. Because again, with virtual reality, you are able to do a game, which is just fun. Kids love games. Everyone loves games. So it's kind of fun. You could practice it independently without there actually being a fire, because you can't even practice a real fire for
right?
anybody.
No.
It was one of their limitations in the studies. We never tested this with fire.
There's an obviously we never tested this with fire.
I live near a fire school, like a firefighter school, where they frequently have fires, like controlled fires. They could go there. But it might be unethical to expose a 5 to 7-year-old to a real fire.
Yeah. That would be something.
That seems traumatic.
Pretty sure it's not going to pass peer review.
No.
But in any case, the nice thing about
like multiply vulnerable population, you're exposed to a fire.
So I mean, the kids themselves they're not necessarily scared of fire. They just wouldn't know what to do in a fire. And I mean, who knows if any kid would know what to do? Because what do we tell the kids? Oh, stop, drop, and roll. Have a safety spot. Go outside. Do this or that. How many of us have ever tested that out with our own children? You don't know if your kids are going to actually use their fire safety.
Our kids freak out when the fire smoke alarm goes off.
Yeah, but nobody tries to leave the house. They just realize they left the shower door open and let the smoke hit it. The steam, sorry. The researchers looked at virtual reality as a means to have multiple modalities. A, it's fun. B, you can see things. C, you can not necessarily touch things, but it looks like you could touch the environment. You can hear. There's auditory senses. So there's a lot more that they can do with virtual reality than you could do in a real
This is a perfect example because you cannot practice this.
No, I mean, not
in real
outside
life.
Of just having a kid, run away and go stand somewhere.
Yeah, and if you have children for whom it might be difficult for them to understand complex verbal language, telling them about a situation like this isn't going to get you very far either.
Yeah.
So this is a perfect use of a virtual reality situation.
And you get to move around. So there's a physical component to the
because what they need to teach you is physical. It's perfect.
Mm-hmm. And the game they used was similar to one they'd used in a previous study for children with autism and other safety skills, but they made this very specifically for children with fetal alcohol syndrome or partial fetal alcohol syndrome by adding some brighter colors and having more pictures. So it was much more visually stimulating.
Yeah, they said they added music
this time
to
around.
it.
Yeah,
so I thought that was really interesting. Because, I mean, all of us, our specialty is working with children with autism.
Mm-hmm.
This is at the Marcus Institute, and they have a group that works specifically with FAS. So they know more about this population, that I guess they respond really well to having those enriching aspects of their materials versus for individuals with autism, it's usually too much stimulation. So I thought that was cool.
And I appreciated the level of detail that they put into the game, because when you're talking about, it was a game, they taught things. I mean, it's hard to understand without seeing the game itself.
Right. It could be like an Oregon Trail game. Right? Like,
you have died.
I now know how to survive in the wilderness because I could have my guy spin in 8 different directions and shoot a square.
Right.
So all the children in this study were 4 to 7, 5 participants. They had, various IQ levels. One was one had average IQ. Some others had low average, borderline. One was scored as deficient. Again, a lot of these students, you'd think, they should be able to learn this skill, but it was not necessarily something that had been taught or been successful. They looked at the Home Fire Safety Program from the U.S. Fire Administration. So there are 3 steps in terms of fire safety. You want to have the ability to recognize that there is a fire danger. You want to leave the house immediately at the shortest and safest route. And then you want to have a prearranged meeting place that is outside your house, where you will wait for adults or other assistance. So most of you probably remember
mailbox.
that. Yeah, probably remember that from PSAs from when you were a kid and would watch cartoons. They used to advertise that. Did you ever see that?
Yeah. Smokey McGruff or somebody.
Yeah, Smokey McGruff. The crime-fighting, firefighting dog / bear monster.
Oh, I don't know what he was called. Sparky?
It's McGruff, the crime dog.
Did he also work on the fire safety?
No, he just wanted you to take a bite out of crime. I don't remember if he did fire safety.
There was a singing light bulb that told us not to go near power lines.
I remember there was a singing smoke detector that told you how to get out of the house in times of a fire.
He did not come to my school.
Jackie, this is your forte. What PSA did you see when you were a child about fire safety?
I just had Smokey the Bear. We didn't really talk about any other thing except for not burning down the forest near our school.
Oh, that's a good idea, too.
Can prevent forest fires. But I do want you to know that when I quickly looked at McGruff the crime dog, he was created by Dancer Fitzgerald, and his slogan was "Take a bite out of crime," and there's multiple 80s commercials on YouTube looking at them.
Oh, good. So that's something to do in your spare time, everybody.
If you go to www.mcgruff.org, the crime dog and his pal Scuff bring ideas about kids staying safe through safety puzzles, games, and coloring pages.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Yeah, trench
coat. Oh.
Geez. Hi, I'm McGruff.
You hear
Welcome
that?
to my office. Most people come to see me when they've got a problem. If you've got a problem, you've come to the right place.
That?
It's coming through loud and clear, yeah.
Nice.
That's great. Thank you for that.
That's good. Anyway, Jackie, so glad you could be here for that. You're all alone in a cabin in the snow. I understand. You're going a little crazy.
Oh.
All right, I'll finish the intro, and then you don't have to just watch McGruff videos anymore. So with the kids, they started with a preliminary training. So they wanted to make sure the kids could identify the various components that they would find in the virtual reality game. So fire, the meeting place, the different actions. So following, they had like an animated character that the kids would follow as one of their prompt steps, sitting, waiting, and then also using the computer click, so being able to move around. And they talk about how some kids used joysticks and some kids used, I think, a keyboard. They really wanted to make it easy for them to move around the virtual environment. They started with the participants in having 2 visits with sort of an initial training, and then they did a 1-week follow-up later on, a post-visit.
That seems like a very little amount of time, right? I mean, like, just one time you were going to train. Like, imagine taking, like, just a typical kid and bringing them in one time. It doesn't seem like a lot of time. Like, I'm not sure, like, what you can do in one visit, really.
Yeah, and they taught them to find out the pictures. They tried to see if they would sequence the steps of the home fire safety procedure.
I think they struggle to figure out how do you work on generalization without actually having a real scenario.
I mean, they did a fire drill. I mean, they did the equivalent of a fire drill at the end of it. Which, I mean, honestly, how do we teach all of our children in schools to leave in case of a fire? We do a fire drill. Yeah. That's it. There's never a fire. There's never any real danger. They just have the alarm and you all leave. Yeah.
The picture seemed like an interesting step. And then for some of the kids, they had a hard time with it.
Yeah. They sort of blamed that on the fact that it was probably cognitively challenging because the kids who had the lower IQ had a hard time with the pictures.
Which makes sense, yeah.
One kid refused to use picture number 2. I didn't quite get that component. It seemed very extraneous. Like our virtual reality game taught the kids to sequence pictures. Like who Discrete Trial could probably have taught them to sequence pictures, and I wouldn't say that they had any sort of fire safety skills afterwards.
But that one really was just a pre-test, post-test to see if they knew anything too. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure that for them, when I was reading the article, it didn't seem like that was like the main point. I think that was just telling them, okay, they actually have no idea because they can't even sequence these pictures. But after, they can because they theoretically or hypothetically learned the steps of fire safety, but who knows?
Yeah. I mean, it was an additional measure that they could look at other than just the fire drill.
Yeah, it felt extraneous, though. It seemed like if you can get the kids to follow the steps of a fire drill and they couldn't before, that's the big win.
Yeah, maybe they wanted to hedge their bets and have a couple options. Sure. Yeah,
everyone loves sequencing tasks, right? So they did the pre-learning, so the kids all practiced the arranging the pictures, identified the different pieces of the virtual reality game, and they'd ask them questions like, "What do you do if you see a fire?" Some of them said to put it out, call the fire department. I don't know. So the kids really didn't have a sense of how they would react in a fire. And they had them sequence the pictures and identify the pictures to 100% accuracy before they played the game. And before they got into the fire safety game, they played a little treasure hunt game to get them used to the idea of moving around in the virtual world. And I wanted to play treasure hunt.
Me too.
It sounded really fun.
Yeah.
But the kids all loved it, and they learned to use keys or their joystick to move around. And then they moved on to the actual fire safety game.
So I'm going to talk about how they use virtual reality for training. So they had 2 conditions. They had a no fire present and a fire present in several places in the game. And each of the conditions had 3 levels. One was an animated guide-led level, so that was where there was yellow arrows that indicated the correct path out of the house. So that's one condition.
And it was a little character, they said, too, because then later on, they anecdotally talked about how the kids really loved the little character and they wanted a picture of the character.
So that's kind of fun. It's like a throwback to the Nick Vanslow post.
That's right.
I sort of imagine the character just looked like Nick Nick was going around showing the kids how to get out of the house.
Awesome. Nick's like, come this way. The second condition in the second level was an animated guide led, but there was no arrows, so just just Nick Vanslow was helping. And then the third level was no Nick Vanslow, no guide, and no errors. So here, this was just helping to, I think, promote successful completion of the task. So this is basically prompts. That's what I figured it as. The levels correspond to different prompts. Mm-hmm. Make sure that there's early success.
Mm-hmm. Right.
In the game, it tracked the child's motion, and the character responded to correct actions that the child made in virtual reality. So it would jump up and down and say, good job. If the child attempted to walk into the fire, I love that.
Because, of course, that's what you do when you play a video game is see, how can I kill my character?
Yeah. So the kid was walking into the fire, the screen would go black, and then they would explain the danger, and then the child had to go back to the beginning of the game.
That's great. I love that. You sort of get tired of the app where it's like, boing, boing, that's the wrong answer. Fireworks, fireworks. You should do the real one, and we'll just make the ding sound effect and move on to the next test. It drives me nuts. I like when they have something like this where it's just, hey, don't do that. It's not that exciting when you do that, and start again.
Right? Yeah, because if it was really excited, then you have those kids that are like, I'm going to just keep walking into the fire.
Like animated scream sounds.
Yeah. So after they did that, they just made sure that the students demonstrated competence in the virtual training environment, but they didn't tell us what that was.
As far as I read it, they mastered the steps of the game. So they completed the steps. So they could get out of the house. They saw the fire. They get out of the house. without any of the visuals.
Yeah,
Okay.
the steps were just see the fire,
leave the shortest, safest route.
Yep,
and then
wait.
go to a spot and wait outside the house.
Right. So then they use the original pictures as a generalization set.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could do it in, virtual reality, can you now take these pictures and put them in order? Not really generalization.
They did the fire drill as well. They did the practice fire drill.
But that was at the follow-up visit.
No, they did one. I think they did one right after it too, because they have. Well, we can go to the graphs, which are just. I don't know if you printed this black and white, but pretest graph and generalization to real world picture sequence graph, they're the same color. So luckily pretest was 0, or I'd not be able to tell you which was which. So they had two graphs. They had one that was about the picture sequence generalization and one that was the real world generalization, so the fire drill. And on your x-axis, you have just the 3 steps of the home fire safety rules. Recognize danger, go outside, wait. And then percentage of the students of the 5 students that correctly engaged in that step at pretest, during the actual practice, during the picture sequencing task, and then the generalization follow-up. But they call it generalization to real world / picture sequence. So I guess I think they just lumped it all together for some reason. I did have a hard time
confusing
kind of understanding whether they did the real fire. I know they did it like you said, Jackie, they did the real world fire drill at the follow-up, but they also did the pictures, and why they wanted to put those together, I don't know.
I don't think that they did the fire drill during the training session.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess they did. I mean, they separated out in terms of the top graph is the pictures and the bottom graph is the real world generalization. So they just kind of smoosh it together in the coloring scheme of the graph.
Yes.
All right, so the kids did all this practice, and then they did a 1-week follow-up. So what did they find, Jackie? What were the results?
Well, all 5 children identified the safety components 100% of the time. And after training, they could do the real-world simulation of the fire drill and sequence the pictures.
Well, almost all of them did. There was that one kid who wouldn't do number 2.
Oh,
he just wouldn't use the next picture.
So, yeah, that's what they found at work.
Yeah. Well, there was a component. I think they wanted them to label the pictures. Because I know
worked.
One student wouldn't tell the researchers about steps 1 and 2, but he would go outside and say, wait and sit. So he sort of understood the concept, but
he didn't want to talk through it, so they couldn't
They didn't score it.
Confirm that he comprehended all the steps.
Yeah.
But if you make it to step 3, then you've done steps 1 and 2?
Probably. I mean, technically you might not have taken the best route, or you overgeneralize the idea of running out of your house and waiting somewhere, whether there's fire or not, potentially.
True. He could just always wait by the mailbox.
Yeah.
No matter if there's a fire, but...
It would have been nice if they did some social validity measures here, because they do say the children were enthusiastic about it, but actually tell us if it was effective or not, or if the parents thought it was effective, or any of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they only did the 1-week follow-up, and in the 1-week follow-up, the ability to sequence the pictures wasn't quite as good as it had been, but the ability to follow the real-world generalization was still good.
Yeah.
And then anecdotally, they mentioned that when they'd see the children later on, when they'd come into the clinic, they'd talk about the game and they'd tell them all the rules about fire safety. So they anecdotally felt like the kids were happy about the whole process and still remembered to talk about the rules that they learned with the game. So, not the most exciting graph, but it does definitely have a clear, they couldn't do any of the skills, and they could do the picture skills, then they sort of lost the picture skills, but they kept the actual ability to complete the steps of the home fire safety procedure, even at the 1-week follow-up. At least for 1 week.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a graph for the picture sequence generalization, and then a graph for the real-world generalization.
And I don't
but
care
then
about
they named
the first
bar for the generalization bar the same for both.
They just wanted to use the same color, I guess. Which, if you print black and
little
white,
more
is tan.
On the graph, perhaps. And it's a bar graph with cumulative data for all.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't want to do... Again, why they didn't want to look at each student.
There's 5 participants, so if it's at 100%, then everyone did it correctly. If it's 80%, one of them did not.
Yeah. And
there are things that maybe the graph could be a little more clear on.
Yeah, and they mentioned how it was multiple baseline, multi-step, pre-post test. But it really was just...
it's not
pre-post
multiple
test.
baseline.
There's no multiple baseline. I don't know what they're talking about.
They tried.
We thought about doing multiple baseline, but that seemed kind of hard, so we just did this bar graph.
As far as we know, I guess we don't know. The pretest is in the key, but there's no bar to represent the pretest score, so it's 0.
It's 0. But yeah.
So no one did it in the pretest, but we don't know if there were perhaps multiple probes for the pretest for some individuals. That we don't have those data.
Right. They didn't really give us a good graph representing a multiple baseline design.
They did not.
Yeah.
So it was probably non-concurrent.
But at least we have an actual behavioral measure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they mentioned this is, hey, we're just trying to see if this is something worth exploring. So this was one of those studies where it was, do we get any result whatsoever that makes this worth replicating with more subjects, with more stringent criteria? And they did talk about that.
They have, because they've done other work with this same series with children with autism. And then there's a follow-up study to this one with this population that was published in RIDD.
Oh, great.
As well. Yes. So they've done more work, and it's really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, one of the other limitations they mentioned was that fire safety does go beyond just there's a fire, leave the house, go to a space. They didn't work on any of the skills like don't bring toys with you or try to save items.
Don't go back in.
Yeah, don't go back inside. Touch the doorknob to see if it's hot before you just open a door.
Get down low.
So these would be, and these would be skills would be important because, you teach a kid, get out of the house as fast as possible. But if you don't teach them to check for doors, then
or what if an exit's blocked? Then what do you do? Yeah, there's a lot of.
I think they did try to move the fire around a little bit, so they did practice that a bit. And potentially you could, with the modern setups of virtual reality, you probably could do something similar to the doorknob's hot. Like when you touch the doorknob, your controller turns red, so don't go that way, and if you do, you die. So you could actually probably gamify it a little bit more to be a little closer to, hey, you're in a fire, here are some other rules you need to know.
Right.
And you can say, oh, well, how will you ever know that this really generalizes? And I don't know. There's no way to, and then we put them in the murder house where there's a fire and there's no way to practice that.
Right.
So you go on what you have. But you could make it closer to real life. And there is research to say that, virtual reality can have very similar effects to actual real life practice. So that's what you got.
It seems closer than, hearing.
It's better than your sequencing pictures.
Sparky the crime dog.
Spark, stop it. It's McGruff. Jackie played the whole song and everything.
Scruff is his pal.
Is he wearing a fireman costume?
Yes.
There you go, Rob.
There's
Scruff. Scruffy.
There's a dog and a puppy.
Yeah.
See, now I feel like that's just the picture for the episode. It's going to be McGruff the crime dog. Oh, well, in any case, that's virtual reality to teach fire safety skills.
Cool.
And with that, I'm going to put on my VR goggles and go into the virtual dissemination station. That's the sound of cyberspace.
That was awesome.
All right, so dissemination. We talked a little bit about it, but what are our points for future research or for take-home?
I feel like this area is wide open for additional research. Now, I recognize that what we're talking about here, this is just a tool.
Yes.
Virtual reality is not a treatment in and of itself, so we're not presenting it that way at all, right? It's just an opportunity to work inside an environment that might be difficult to access in other ways, or being able to modify an environment more easily than you can in real life in order to make changes to the antecedent conditions surrounding a particular situation in order to practice in that setting. Like, that's all. If you want to be adding consequence manipulation, you're going to need to be doing that yourself. The virtual environment isn't really going to do that for you. So that's why it lends itself so nicely to working on these phobias or desensitization, or, like we just read about, practice particular series of actions in a particular setting. It's perfect for that. So I think that there are many ways in which behavior analysis could take on virtual reality as an additional teaching tool, or environmental tool, I guess you could say, to practice many of the things that we work on. We have many children, specifically, if we're talking about the autism population, who have difficulty in chaotic environments, noisy environments. They might have difficulty with hygiene routines, haircuts, flying.
In 2014, Autism Speaks funded a study looking at how virtual reality can help teaching social skills to adults with autism spectrum disorder.
Mm-hmm.
The early results show that it has been really effective.
Awesome.
At teaching it. So that's kind of awesome. They used a 5-week training. They didn't use behavioral measures as much as they used looking at like brain scans and MRIs, which is kind of interesting.
I could see you really gamifying that, because the virtual reality headsets nowadays have head movement tracking. I don't think it's exactly eye tracking, but you could set up all sorts of social situations where you could even score points, like, oh, you're making the appropriate amount of eye contact, oh, you responded to this cue, like the person's
really,
the virtual person is not looking at you, so don't talk to them right now, or they're talking with another virtual person, so you need to engage in some other behavior. And it wouldn't be perfect, because I don't know if it has enough voice recognition, though there's voice recognition software out there to know, oh, you're talking to me, therefore you get this many points, or the avatar responds to you in a certain way. But I'm guessing that you could at worst make it similar to some of those like Model Me Kids games where it's, what should you do? Your friend isn't paying attention to you, should you?
Yeah.
And then you pick from a choice. So again, not perfect, but better than just watching a video of someone doing something, or talking through, or even just practicing with a school counselor or your BCBA or your paraprofessional, just practicing in these fake environments. It would be a little bit closer. And I know some schools are very tough to practice social skills, because you have to pull kids out of class to have them talk with you. The parents have to say, you're fine to pull this kid out of class to work on social skills. It's hard to make sure that the children are actually going to be good peer models or follow whatever protocol you want them to follow. And there's just a lot of hoops to jump through for a skill that feels like, well, shouldn't we just be able to practice this all the time? And for some reason, it seems very hard to do so. So, hey, this might be a good way to just get a lot of practice. And then plus, it's more fun. I'm guessing a lot of students who the idea of, hey, go practice talking with people sounds scary or boring or just more work. If it's a game, most people will approach a task where there's a game or a game component, and you can win. That's
really cool.
I mean, I made up some of that stuff. Just knowing about some technologies, I do not know if that exists.
Yeah,
but it could, as far as I've seen with video games that exist on the market now.
So much you could do with conversation skills, or incorporating natural gestures, reading cues of the conversational partners, recognize when they're bored, or you need to change topics. Like, those are all really hard skills to teach and hard to find opportunities to practice naturalistically. So what you're describing, if you could make that exist for me, that would be really awesome.
Let me go program that right now.
Sweet, thanks, Rob.
I'm just trying to put our past episodes on the website, and that's taken me 2 weeks. So sure I'll get right on that advanced Half-Life. Maybe I'll do Half-Life 2 engine this time.
Nice.
Bump it up a little.
How to feed your pet spider.
Yeah. So if you were interested in virtual reality, it has never been cheaper. It has never been more realistic, and you could do whatever research you can imagine. At this point, there's all sorts of ideas.
Also kind of building upon sequencing a fire drill, you could work on anything that needed to practice a full sequence of. It doesn't have to be an emergency situation too. So like job training before you actually go, film the whole Starbucks environment, or create a Starbucks environment, and
just
then
get a 360. You get a GoPro, a 360 camera, and you could actually film where it is that you are going to go. You could film someone's getting up, leaving the house, getting on the right bus, going to their job. You could film that whole thing and have them practice it in virtual reality, walk through the whole thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
There's actually a game called Job Simulator that everyone says is the funnest game, because you make like space burgers. But hey, you could make it real burgers.
Right, yeah.
Or you could teach kids how to drive.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Yeah, you could set up
that.
Like motorcycle school. So this morning I was hanging out with this 9-year-old, and he was showing me his video game that he was playing called Motorcycle School. And I was thinking about how if you could use that in virtual reality to teach people how to drive.
Yeah, you can use Google Maps or Google Streets. You can do the street views, and you're right there. There you are. Some of those, and those are supposed to be very realistic. Like you're in the place.
This is cool.
Yeah, it is a cool technology. I really hope people take advantage of it. You know, I think we always talk about we need technology and all these new technologies, but this is not one that I think is sort of hit the mainstream in the way you would want it to.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe it has. Maybe there's a lot more work going on, and we're just not privy to it, or we don't know the labs.
There's not a lot of research out there in our field yet. Maybe it's all happening as we speak. Mm-hmm. But I'm excited to learn more.
Yeah.
Me too.
So for those of you who are listening to this episode and would like to apply for continuing education credits, here is our second secret code word. And that code word is scale. SCALE, like the scale of a snake, or the idea of room scale virtual reality. So virtual reality that takes into account your space. Scale.
Cool.
Yeah. They're all topical. All topical code words this episode.
Got it.
Any other thoughts, folks?
I can't wait until springtime.
Yeah, right?
Hopefully you'll be free of the virtual studio very soon, Jackie. If you're good, we'll let you out of my phone and you can join us in real life.
Yay!
All right, everybody. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our look into the future, or the future is now, I guess, and research related to the use of virtual reality for the treatment of fire safety and for phobias. It's a real cool area. Thank you so much, Diana, for thinking of it. It's very outside the box.
Yeah, it was cool. The future is here. The future is now.
Jackie, before we go, I know you would want to talk about something.
Yeah, I want to do two things, really. First, I want to tell anyone that's interested in coming to Regis College to be part of our Masters of Behavior Analysis program. We are now accepting admissions for the fall 2017. If you want to come over and hang out and learn about behavior analysis. For those of you that are BCBAs, Regis also has an invited lecture series that started this spring. So each month we have prominent behavior analysts come and talk about their area of expertise. Next month we're going to have Amanda Carson come talk about ethics. And then Bill Ahern's going to actually talk about anxiety in the following month. And then Peter Gerhardt will be coming to Regis to talk about sexuality education. So you should really look up our invited speaker series and come. And we have their 2 CEUs, and they're $30 each. And you also get snacks, and you'll see me.
Yes.
So many good things.
We had similar topics on our show, Jackie. The only thing we were missing is we have no snacks for you. If you are listening, we cannot transmit those to you.
And we're not real. You know, they can listen to us whenever. They can't see us and touch my hand and get a hug from me.
Well, we have a virtual reality podcast coming up, so you can you can touch us yourself with your virtual reality controllers.
Right.
For massive points.
So come on down. That's all.
Beautiful. Well, everybody, thanks so much for listening to the show. We always appreciate hearing from you on our Facebook page or on Twitter. We're at ABA Inside Track in both places. You can email us to apply for CEs or to drop us a line at abainsidetrack@gmail.com. And that's about all. We'll be back next week with another episode, one of our preview episodes, where we let you know our next exciting topic. Thanks, Diana, and thank you, Jackie, for being here.
Even though I'm not there.
Even though you're not there. Thanks for nothing, I should say.
Thanks for being here, Rob.
Thank you for being here, Diana. We're here, Jake. Where are you? You're on the phone. I think this worked out okay. I'm happy you were willing to stare at your computer with no feedback whatsoever for over an hour. Thanks, Jackie.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone. Again, thank you very much for listening. Join us next week for another episode. But until then, keep responding. Bye.
Bye.